Hi everybody, welcome again to another installment of Conversations in Wire. I'm your host, James Browning, and I am a sales representative for the Soft Flex company. We are a jewelry wire manufacturer based out of sunny Sonoma, California. Today I'm going to be showing you a few tips and tricks on using a wire jig. We have the WigJig series that we are just starting to carry again at the Softflex company. And today I'm going to be showing you how to use the WigJig to create some filigree and make this cute little crescent moon pendant. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so supplies that we're going to need for this project. We're going to need some 18 gauge dead soft wire. This is Softflex wire. It's I'm going to be using bare copper. It's a copper core wire. I used non-tarnished silver on this project. And then we're also going to need some 26 gauge wire. That's for wrapping to make these little tiny little lashings here. So then we're also going to need a jig. This is the WigJig Delphi. It's going to be brand new on our website here as of right now. And we also have some super pegs that I'm going to use, just the smallest one. And then these are the pegs that come with the WigJig itself. For tools, we're going to need some round nose. I also have some chain nose, and then of course our nylon jaw tools and some cutters. Alright, so the first thing that we want to do is we want to get some of our 18 gauge out. Now, if you have other things to use around your house for mandrels, that's great. I'm using a giant ibuprofen bottle, but what I want to do is I want to take the wire around this because this is going to be my moon shape, so I just want to make sure that I have enough to do that. So that looks to be about, I'd say about 8 inches, so I'm just going to cut that off right now. And let's straighten this out really quick. Grab one side with my chain nose pliers, and then just take a nice swipe. And I always turn it 90 degrees so I can get both sides. Just do it a couple of times because you don't want to overly harden your wire. Alright, now I'm going to take this and shape it. So I've got a general circle. And then I'm going to take my round nose and I'm just going to put a fairly large loop. This is going to be my beginning loop. Alright. Now, so since this is the top of my moon, I'm going to kind of eyeball here where the halfway point is, and I'm going to bend my wire around my round nose tool here. So basically what I'm doing is I'm creating the end here of my moon. Apologize for the traffic noises. I'm at home in my kitchen. Such a nice day out. My doors are open. So then the next thing that I do is I find a smaller mandrel. In this case I'm using the top of the bottle to create the inside of the moon. Now this next part is just kind of fiddling around with it until you find the size of moon that you like, and then put it aside, because now we're going to cut off some of our copper wire and we're going to use the jig. Now if you've never used a jig before, there's a couple of things you need to keep in mind. They come in different sizes. This is, like I said, is the Delphi or Delphi. There are larger ones, and then there are ones that have a circular pattern on the top. The best thing to do when you're using this, these are clear, so if you have, like, say, this is one of the books that we offer on our website. They have patterns in them that you can actually just lay your jig right over, and then it'll tell you where to put your pegs. So if you want to make this shape, then you just got to follow the directions on here. I do not have a pattern for mine. I'm just going to do a simple, the first shape is going to be this. So what we're doing is we're going to start with one peg, and we're going to take our wire, straighten it out. That's really important when working with a jig, is that you have really nice straight wire, because it's really hard to get those wibbles out after you've made some filigree. So try and get those out right off the bat. And I'm going to make a small loop right at the top. Now, for this project, it's important to remember which way your curls are going. So if we look here, the curl is on the inside, so I'm going to start with the curl facing this way. So you could put it this way, but that would change the look. I want them on the inside. And then I'm going to put a pin. You can take your moon if you want. I'm going to put a pin about here. And then all we're going to do is we're going to hold this down, and we're going to take our jig, and we're just going to allow the wire to go around the jig, lift it up to go over the peg here, and then let that relax. And they do pop off a little easy, so just be careful. And then I'm going to take another peg here, and I'm going to put it right across the way here. Now remember, what we want to do is we want to achieve this inside, so that means that we're going to go around the outside. And I'm pushing down on the jig, on the wire here, to keep it down on the bottom. And I'm just taking this and making a complete loop there. So I have a shape like this. Now, the WigJig and all jewelry wire jigs are really good. What I'm doing now is I'm taking my nylon jaw tools and I'm kind of flattening the pattern out. But as I was saying, is that the jigs are really good to create a design and then make the same design over and over and over again, knowing that you're going to have really similar pieces. So if you're making chain, this is a really good tool to have, because you're not going to have very much variation when you're creating your pieces. So I want to create a little bit of a curve. So I'm going to take these and I'm just going to pull them back. And actually, I don't think I made this long enough, so I'm going to put this link aside, and I'm going to take this down to, and this is over 1. So I'm going to try and make this shape again. Now they say that the best thing to do with jigs is to use one peg at a time, so that it doesn't get in your way, and that's entirely up to you if you want to do it that way. For this, because the pegs are generally not in my way, I'm just going to go ahead and go for it. So I've added some length to that design, and I'm just going to do the same thing I did before. And you can make this loop on the bottom tighter if you want by going all the way past this loop, or past this peg, and going around and then coming back. But I'm going to let it be, but then I remember that I have to go around. So I'm going to come outside of the peg and twist this back around. Okay, that gives us a longer one, so I like this better. So I'm going to cut this off. Okay. Now when you cut your loop, if it turns out to be a little bit not the way you want it to, you can take your chain nose pliers and just kind of squish it up there. And then I'm going to take my round nose and give it kind of a turn on the inside to give it a little bit more of a curve. So it's kind of a heart shape. And I love fiddling, you know me, so I'm going to go ahead and pull that apart a little bit and give this more of a rounded heart shape. And this side is fighting me for some reason, so I'm going to take my chain nose and just kind of squish it up a little. See if we can get this to square up a little. Well, it isn't exactly what I wanted, but that will do for now. So the next thing I do is I just kind of measure in my moon to see how that looks. And I think that will be good. So now I want to create this shape. And the way I do that is I take a piece of wire and I put my loop and then I take one of these big jigs and I get it as close to that other peg as I can. And I look and I see that the curl is going inside. So we actually want to be making it this way. So we're going to put curl on the inside, like so. And then we're going to take this around to give us a nice round shape. And then this is going the opposite way, so I'm going to take this out, hold down my wire, and take this and curl it around that way. So now I have this really interesting shape. So I'm going to clip off the excess wire here. I'm going to flatten that loop out. And then I'm going to open this up a little, take my round nose, and just kind of curl in. And it's going to help that I started around that other circular peg to get a nice round shape. And you can always take this one and do the same, just go in the opposite direction. And fiddle with it if you don't like it. But using the pegs will help get this shape, which is what I always struggle with when I'm trying to do these by myself. So let's go ahead and just make one more. And the jigs are cool because they also allow you to make findings really easy, like the loop and hook clasps are really easy to make with a jig. Ear wires, of course. So, I mean, it's something to keep in your toolbox when you are struggling or needing to make mass amounts of things. And the other thing when you're making this shape is to try not to make a sharp neck here because we want this to curl. All right, so let's put this peg back. Where did we have it? Right there. And we're going around. Just make sure that your curls are facing the same direction. That's the most important part for this first. And then come past the peg and go backwards. And at this point you can take this other peg out, hold down your wires, and then you've got your second loop. All right. So cut off that excess wire. So we're going to take this one and fold it down, kind of making this nice circular wrap like that. I'll take this one and swoop it out a little. So we should have something similar, and what I always end up doing is just tweaking until I get where I want it to be. Now if your circles are not matching, you can take a little bit off the end with your cutters and then just rebend that circle on the inside. So this looks like it needs to bend a little bit more. So I'm going to do that trick with my chain nose and just kind of eke that in a little like that. Kind of like the shape of this one now. So let's see if we can get this to open up a little. So I think that is fairly close. So now we're going to move all of the jig stuff out of the way. And we're going to take a look at our moon. See where we're at. So we want to put this in the middle. And if you squish up the moon, you're going to kind of see how much room you have. So you may have to fiddle with your shapes a little. So I like that. And then this will go right here. And that will be fine. And then this one, we'll bring it back down. Okay, so now we'll need some 26 gauge wire. You don't need a lot. I just don't like to cut a lot, so about a foot, maybe less. Depends on how good you are at wrapping. If you are not very good at wrapping, I would give yourself less because it will kink. It will not kink up on you or get in your way as easy. Alright, so to lash, what we're going to do is we're going to get our wire where we want it, and what we want to achieve is that the wires are going to be next to each other, not on top of each other. So we want them to just wrap so that they are sitting next to, so like this. Remember, with your wraps, we want to make them nice and tight and right next to each other. We don't want them to be on top of each other. And it really only takes about 4 wraps. And I'm going to take my flat nose pliers, or my chain nose, and I'm going to give a little flattening that helps the wire to cinch up around your project there. So that's all we need. And just clip off that excess. Okay. Now what I'm doing is I'm lashing the wire closest to my base wire. So I don't want to wrap this, I want to wrap that part. Just take my wire, stick it in there. Now this, I'm not going to be able to just lash like I normally would, so I'm going to have to thread it through. So it does take a little bit more patience with this. You want to make sure that you're not going to kink your wire when you pull it through. So shorter wire works better with this kind of lashing, because otherwise you'll end up with some kinks. And for appearance sakes, try and keep the number of wraps that you're doing the same. So we did 4 over here, so I'm going to do 4 more. So that looks good. The other thing that squishing these wires does is it really helps them to set their shape so they don't spin, and because that is a pain in the butt. Alright, then the last lash for this shape is going to be right here. And this is another thing where we're not going to be able to just wrap it, so we'll have to thread it through. If I can get this to work with me. Alright, there we go. So remember, right next to each other. Three, and then should be the last one. Give that a good squish. And then clip off the excess. And we have our first piece of filigree wrapped up in our moon. Okay, so now let's get this piece situated. So when you're designing this, the middle piece and the widest part of your swirl should be about the same size, because you want them to taper from thin to thick and back down again. So this is just about right, but I think I'm going to just take it out just a little. And I want it to be as flat as I can be. So let's take my wire here, thread it through. See, this is what happens when it kinks. We don't want that. All you have to do is take your nylon jaw and just zip it right out there. And remember, we're trying to achieve the wires next to each other, not sitting on top, and this is fighting me a little, so just be mindful, take your time. And sometimes, even before you finish, if you want to take a moment and just flatten those wires out, that might help sit them down where they're supposed to be. Okay, got one more. Okay, so we've got that lash down. Cut off the excess. Now I know you guys are noticing all these little tiny wire horns out there, but we're just going to take care of those at the end. Now, as a design choice, you could not wrap through the center of the circle if you wanted to, through this hoop here, and wrap this part of the wire, but since I did it on one side, I'm going to do it again, because I want to keep that consistent. Making sure my wires are not overlapping. I'm going to take this plier and squish it down again. Let's do one more just to make sure everything is in there, and then cut off the excess. Now if you notice, things are getting tight and it's causing things to pop around. So we want to make sure that we're giving it a little bit of movement room. So we may have to go back, push these down where they're supposed to be, just fiddle. That's the cool thing about wire work, is you do have room to keep fiddling. It's not like soldering where you have to be precise and be done with it as soon as you're finished, because that solder hardens and then you have to just basically unsolder it and take it off. But this is cold connection, just wire wrapping, and it gives us a lot more freedom, so we like that. Okay, so here's the final connection on this piece of filigree. This one hopefully will be a little easier. So it has been super hot in Sonoma, California, and today is one of the first days that it hasn't been like 90 degrees at noon. So I am enjoying this nice cooler weekend. Hopefully wherever you guys are at, it is not as hot. Okay, so this, just want to show you, I overlapped and we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that our lashing is right next to each other. Otherwise, it starts to look not neat and put together. So try and make all of your stitches neat so that it looks more finished. Okay, so we have our first two pieces, and everything looks like it is sticking where we put it. We are having a little bit of flipping, which means that the wire is too tight around these things, so hopefully we can fix that at the end. Right, here is our last piece. Make sure when you're putting this in that your design is kind of lining up. So there we go. So we want to lash this top part down first. Do that real quick. And before I get too far, I really want these to be close like that. So my design is supposed to be swirl upon swirl basically. So you can do whatever you want to do, but I want them to be close. Take a moment, squish this down real quick, and just do 2 more lashings. Actually, I think that's the last lash. Trying to maintain some continuity. That helps with design as well, so it doesn't look rushed. I think that's the biggest thing that you see as beginner pieces, is that you're learning new techniques and you're just putting them together, but you're not taking very much time to make sure that all of your components are finished. So by making sure that all of your wraps are the same number or that they're matching with their next door neighbor, you're going to see neater work and it'll look a little bit more professional. So just keep that in mind. Now I'm going to lash this bottom one next. Now this one I could just wrap because it's open for me to do. And I like that because that is not as easy to get tangled up with. But you still want to take a moment and flatten the wrap because that will help keep everything on the same level. And when you're doing this, also make sure you're not overlapping these wraps. It's really, really easy when you're rushing to overlap, and it just does not look as neat. Okay, cut off the excess. We are almost done wrapping our pieces. So now we just need to do this last little piece. So I apologize for the noise out there. That's my lovely neighbor getting her stuff ready for the day. I'm doing this at home because I ran out of time to do this at work. So you guys are going to sit with me in my kitchen and get this done today. But look how fast that last one went together. So easy, so quick. Okay. So we have our basic moon shape. Now we want to finish it off. This is where I take a moment and I get everything fiddled out to be where I want it to be. And then, like I did on this one, what we're going to do is take our round nose and we're going to just make a loop out of this end piece. And you can make however kind of loop that you want. This one, I might want to cut off this end here. And then take my chain nose and just kind of pull it up a little. Okay, so see, now we have this. And we could change the top here if we wanted to decrease that blank space, but I think what I'm just going to do is move these a little so that they fill that space better. And I'm going to take some more of that 26 gauge wire and just lash these last two pieces together. And squishing these together will help that be flat. And I'm just going to take it around the top just to secure that wrap. And with this one, I'm going to do the same thing. This is just a little bit harder, but it just helps that to stay really secure. Now with wire, you don't have to worry about that too much. As long as you've got about 3 to 4 wraps, your wire is not going to uncurl. But if you pull on something that's been wrapped together and there's not enough of the wire, it can pull itself apart. So this is the way that I make sure that I've got everything secure. Alright, and now we can go back and just finish up by tucking our ends, making sure there's no so then we just go through and we just make these little wraps nice and neat and get our ends tucked in. Sometimes you can just take the plier and just kind of burnish it down. Depends on how long your pieces or your ends are. You got to burnish with the direction that your wire is wrapping. That will help make those things go the right direction. And then you just want to run your fingers over your wraps and just double check to make sure that there's nothing catching your fingers. Like this one, totally forgot to do, so. So that is how you use filigree. And you can take some beads if you want, and you can finish this up with, you know, some danglies like I did on this one, or you could just leave it alone and make it a really simple filigree piece. It is entirely up to you. I might do some dangly bits here after and dress it up a little. I haven't decided yet, so I'm just going to finish up now. So that is how I use the WigJig to create filigree to fill in on necklaces. You can use the same sort of pattern, filigree to cover on a cabochon when you're wrapping it onto a bezel. You can use this same sort of technique to make an entire necklace out of filigree. I hope this really helped, and I really enjoyed spending some time with you, and you guys have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.